Okay, so we're on. Okay, we're gonna start the meeting a little bit late tonight. Looks like it's 6:41 due to some IT problems. But we've been solved, and thank you to Susan for coming down and trying to help us out. It says at the time 6:41. My name is Bob Carlson. I'm the first selectman. Also with us tonight is Nicole Porter, selectwoman, and Selectman Brett Mastriani. So the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great. Are there any comments on public comment on non-agenda items? Public comment on non-agenda items? Nothing online? Okay, great. Minutes. We have minutes from August 6th.
Bob, it's Winona. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself fast enough.
I'm
Can you
sorry.
hear me?
You have a question? Yeah, sorry, Winona, go ahead.
So I know that we don't maintain Route 201, but I just wanted to bring something to your attention. So at the top of the hill, right before 115, there's an uncovered like culvert. It's pretty close to the road. That looks a little dangerous, and I don't know if that's supposed to be that way, but I don't know if somebody could have somebody look at that or just put like a grate over top of it or something.
So it's a culvert that looks like it's exposed and it's dangerous, and it's around house number 115.
Yeah, it's at the top of the hill on the flat, and it's before house 115 going south on 201
Going toward Griswold or going toward Route 2?
towards Route 2.
Okay.
There's conveniently right now, there's a cardboard box right kind of next to it. I don't know. It feels uncomfortable to me. So thank you.
All right, I'll have the guys look at it in the morning. Not a problem. Matter of fact, is
Thank
Alan
you.
up? All right, thank you. Yeah, it is. But usually Alan's the guy that calls the state since he worked for the state for. Alan, if you can hear me, maybe tomorrow put a call into the state to talk about that culvert that's exposed that Winona just brought up.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, so we have minutes from August 6th.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the Town of North Stonington's Board of Selectmen meeting held on August 6th, 2024 at 6:30 PM at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
That's great. Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 3-0 passes. Thank you. Are there any comments by either selectman?
Yeah, I just would actually like to make a motion to add rec grounds to item number 10 where it says 298 grounds. I'd like it 298 grounds and rec grounds.
Okay. We'll just add it. We already had that line in the agenda, so we just add to the line. Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion by either selectman on anything?
Oh, I just wanted to, do we have to vote on that or no, to add something to the
No.
agenda? Okay. I just wanted to thank everybody for their hard work on the pickleball courts. This long weekend, I drove by many times and saw a lot of people using them. So
Wow.
they came out really, really
I drove
nice.
by 2 or 3 times and saw nobody, so
Oh, really?
I was
Yeah.
getting
No,
disappointed.
every time I drove by, there was somebody there.
Okay. Going back, I think we should vote to add rec, since rec wasn't spelled out on number 10, 298 grounds discussion is, but rec isn't. So why don't we, I'll motion that at Brett's request, we add a discussion on rec grounds to go along with a discussion on 298 grounds on number 10 on our agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? None here, all those say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, perfect. First selectman report, comment and correspondence. You might have got it in your packet. We had a letter from Porkaduck neighborhood just thanking us for the donation they got this year, which is part of the budget system. There's also a letter that we'll address in number 7 from Gary Anino. He usually requests us tapping the trees on those 3 lots at the end of Main Street up near the Red Onion. And the third thing is, you just mentioned the pickleball courts, Nicole. So Friday morning at 9 o'clock, there's going to be a little bit of a dedication of those. I've asked the Rotary to send some people after the meeting. They meet from 7 to like 8:30 at the senior center. And they're the ones that donated the 15,000 towards. So they're going to come down. I put a call into Tom Fabian. I haven't spoken to him yet. I have spoken to Heath about getting some representatives from the Rec Commission down. And we'll have some people in the background playing pickleball. And then I put a call into Jason Valley. He hasn't called me back, but I'll call him again from the Wesley Sun, see if he wants to go down and take a picture. And I put a temporary sign up there today that says something to the effect of the pickleball courts made possible by a generous donation by the Rotary. It's just on one of our sandwich boards for today, for now, but we'll have something more permanent put up there so the Rotary will get some recognition for those courts. That's Friday at 9 if you're available. If not, I mean, you won't see me in any of those pictures, but there will be pictures taken probably of rec people, pickleballers, and Rotary people.
Bob, regarding that, the rec was gonna come up with a plan to have reservations and stuff like that. Has that started yet, or are they just kind
I
of?
don't think anything's really been formalized yet. I imagine maybe the rec can talk about it at their next meeting. Imagine now it's probably going to be a first come first serve, but eventually I'd like to have nets purchased and we keep them in that storage building. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of leagues get formed. But it'd be a nice thing for the rec to monitor.
Yeah, they talked about it at a previous meeting that's the process they were gonna do.
Do
I
we
just
have
didn't-
for the tennis courts at the rec right now?
There's certain ways to reserve things. Yeah.
But as far as so far, no, I have not heard of any formalized plan on how to use them other than first come, first serve at this point. Okay, nothing else on that. So we did get a letter from Gary Nino on maple tree tapping permission. He's done this every year. He's written us a formal letter that's in your packet. We've always said yes. I think he donates the proceeds from the sale of the maple syrup to the library. So is there any discussion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the tapping of the maple trees on the town parcels on Main Street to Gary and Nino.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 3-0. I'll send him an email tomorrow saying that we addressed it and that he's good to go. Okay, capital maintenance, they got town/school discussion. So I met with Michael Anderson and Stephanie Mastriani it was last Thursday. And I put together just a fairly quick proposal on just ideas I had. So this is definitely first go around, nothing solid, just my thoughts of a way we could address this. One thing I did take into consideration was Brett had mentioned doing something with the budget. The cover page, which has a blue background to it. Brett had mentioned that the possibility of adding a line for school capital would make sense. I sent this copy of all this paperwork to both Michael Anderson, the Board of Finance, so he could send it out to his people. And I sent it to Steph Mastriani. She's going to send it out to the Board of Ed. So step one is just a question, and then we can discuss it. Adding, if you see the new blue columns is 5 instead of 4. You used to say government operating, debt, education, and capital. And when the 2 budget questions came out, we would take government operating, debt, and capital and add it together for our line item. And then the Board of Education would just have their line item. So last year, the Board of Education was $15,438,918. It would be exactly the same next year if we adopt this. And then I wanted the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance to discuss it. We can talk about it at the tri-board meeting next Monday. But adding an education line for capital. So it's stuff that would not fall into the town's capital, and it's things that they wouldn't be purchasing out of their non-lapsing. So when they have, if they wanted to consider something as capital, it'd have to go in one of three places, either come to the town, be in the school's capital line, or be paid for out of non-lapsing. If you look at the next pages, where it says capital and maintenance, I divided into town capital and school capital. So we know the town capital is made up of public works, the fire company, the ambulance association, and town buildings. And we're adding a piece of that now with school capital, which has always been there. We just always haven't had a lot of school capital. But the way I looked at this was anything to do with school buildings, meaning new roof, new HVAC, structural issues, new boiler, large plumbing jobs. That's the town building. So I'm assuming that if that's a town building, it probably should be considered town capital. And I don't think that we've ever really put this on paper and discussed how to break this down. That's, again, just my thought on that. If you look at the school capital, what would be school capital? Whiteboards, furniture, computers, IT, and so on. So again, it's things that are attached to the building, but not the building itself. Again, just the first go around, I'm looking for feedback from you two this evening, the two selectmen this evening, to discuss this more, but because in the first go around, that's the way I see this breaking apart. So let's say that the Board of Ed decides they want to buy some furniture. So there's three places they can come to the Board of Selectmen and say, we think the furniture should be under school building capital. They could say, we think it should be under the school capital, not the town capital. Or they can say, we're just going to purchase out of our non-lapsing account. There's three places for them to go. So I think that's each time they have something that can be considered capital, again, something that's $10,000 with a life of 5 years or more, which of those three categories does it fall in? And I just want to hone in on something more specific on what would be school capital, and what would be town capital. As you look down that list, there's three areas I think capital can fall into at the school. There's the school itself, there's the parking lots, and there's the grounds. My opinion is that the school has no capital when it comes to parking lots. It's all town capital. So if there's new parking lots that have to be made, new line striping on all the parking lots, and if there's resurfacing that's going to add up to $10,000 or more, I believe that should be town capital. Those are our parking lots. On this, I don't think that the school has any capital needs when it comes to parking lots. It should be all town. But the reverse of that is when it comes to the grounds, I don't think the town has any capital when it comes to the grounds. If you look at the school, I have irrigation systems, playgrounds, sports equipment, meaning backstops, fencing, dugouts, et cetera, and utility buildings where they might store lawn equipment or just for storage. I believe that should all be school capital, not town capital. So why don't we, before we get into maintenance, which is the next pages, let's talk a little bit about the capital breakdown and how do you see it and what would you like to have as changes? Where do you think I've missed the mark on this?
I gotta say, thanks, Bob. This is probably the most that has been done on this in 8 years, at least, to try to address some of these things. I know this is the initial discussion on it. I do like the setup. I also think it kind of, when you talk about parking lot versus grounds, I do think it kind of mirrors where we used to be with this permanent school building committee. They used to fund the restriping of the parking lot, maintenance of those kind of things, or capital improvements of those things. So I really like how you broke it out in the examples that you gave. And one thing I would say that if we were to move forward with something like this, we got buy-in from the Board of Finance and the Board of Education, that we might want to, when we call for the town votes, we might want to call this as a separate line vote for school capital. And the reason I say that is I'd hate for this being a new process, for the school budget to be voted down because of the total budget. And then there'd be no feedback on why that was voted down. Was it where if it was broken down on a vote, people would say, hey, I have no problem with the operational budget of the school or the maintenance budget of the school, but the capital I have a problem on. And that way it would allow us to move somewhat forward in addressing those issues.
So you're saying that because it would be, if we adopted it, and we'll go through the tri-board meeting and then go back and go through a process. But if we adopted it, you're saying because it's new, not because in the town side, obviously, we don't do that. Capital is part of the town budget. So you're saying because it would be new to have it at least this year, this time, to have capital as a separate, school capital as a separate line item voted on a
Right.
separate question.
To give people the voice and it gives the school a little more direction on why if for some reason it were to be voted down, I'd hate for it to be voted down because of the capital pieces that were never in there before. But I do like this idea. And one of the reasons I mentioned it in the past about breaking it up is it stops that kind of tough situation of, hey, this is a school capital. Now we're wrestling with that against the fire truck or anything like that, where we are allowed to put our capital through how we think it should be for the town side, and the school can ask for their needs on it without coming through the Board of Selectmen, basically saying, hey, let the Board of Finance and the town kind of decide on these capital improvements, compared to us, which not just this administration, but many prior administrations would cut down on some of that capital for the school based on the needs of the municipality.
Well, when school capital, non-building school capital, when it's in the town budget capital, the town does not have any say on the school budget itself, operating budget. So it kind of gets sticky when there's something in school capital that they put into the town capital. Because now we're not supposed to really fool around with the school budget. But here it is in the town's capital. So we are talking about, should it stay, should it go, and so on, which we've done in the past. I remember a few years ago, the parking lots were in there and those came out. So I think that I agree with you, Brett. I think that it's good to identify, if we can identify what is school capital, what is town capital when it comes to the school itself, then I think it'd be smart to have a separate line item for that. So if they did want to do things like an athletic band or an auditorium, whatever they think it would be capital, and they didn't want to do it on the non-lapsing, then that would make sense. That also shouldn't be in the town capital line.
And it puts a little onus on them to come up with their priorities of knowing, hey, we have to get this approved through the whole town. What are our needs and where are they on our rankings of what? And the second part of this is the benefit is it doesn't build up the Board of Education's budget where, by state law, we can only cut it for certain instances.
Well, the thing is,
There's a lot of laws that go into it, but if it's a school capital, that does not roll into that operational budget.
well, the other thing is it
would be
inflates the budget. And if it does pass, let's say they had a new playground for $50,000 in there, and then the playground gets built. Now that 50,000 doesn't have to be in there anymore, but the overall school budget's $50,000 higher. Because you haven't, unless you replace that with some other capital for 50,000, you just inflated the budget. So I think that's why capital should be separate than the operating budget. And I think the Board of Finance, Michael Anderson about that, I think they have some thoughts too about, and how does that capital affect the non-lapsing as far as money's left over? If capital isn't spent, where does that money go? And that would be a good discussion for September 9th at the tri-board meeting. Okay, so as we turn the page, sorry, Nicole.
So did this come from the capital committee that we?
No, it came from my head.
Because this is exactly what I thought that they were going to work on, is to help us decide what went.
I gotta say, Brett's idea of putting school capital on a separate line was Brett's idea. I just thought it was a good one, so I stole it. But as far as these other ideas, no, this is we always talk about, shaking the building upside down, all those kind of
That's
thoughts.
exactly what I was going to say.
And I thought
This is in line with that.
you get the building itself, then your things that are attached
Yeah.
to the building, or the grounds, the grounds basically, the grounds, but they're not directly related to the school education part. It's a sports part, or it's a recreation part.
But I just want to clarify what you're asking. Are we asking that at every referendum, every budget referendum from here on out, that we have the 5 lines, or just the next year where it will be the first time that we're separating out? Because the goal, right, is that if some of these things were on capital. Either they're gonna come out of our budget and our budget's gonna look a little bit better, or it's gonna come out of there. So either one, the town is gonna look at them and say, oh, what's different from past years? Is it just gonna be next year, or do you want every budget referendum?
So there's
Broken out in the
two
five.
separate questions there. So I would say that this budget summary, the one we've had with the 4 lines prior, be consistent through from here on out. So you would always see Board of Education capital.
Capital.
The variable would be how long do you want to keep it as a separate vote? That's the only
Okay.
variable that I would see. And one other benefit that I see in this, and I was talking to a business manager from another town recently, and we were talking about some of their capital needs and how they work, or even some of their huge maintenance items. And he says, it's great, we put them in our budget, but once that budget's passed and the school has full authority over those, now this wasn't our town, but those are the monies that are taken the fastest. I should say more of the maintenance than the capital. Those big maintenance items are taken when they're if something else is overspent for books or things like that, they'll automatically take that maintenance money. So it is important that the town be on board with what kind of maintenance is going on and making sure those kind of things don't happen either.
So, Nicole, one thing to know is you said these things, we haven't had any school capital on our budget for a while, a few years. So we're not going to go down. If anything, we are still going to go up, because if we're taking any of the capital, we talked about new roof, HVAC, structural, boiler, large plumbing, our budget's going to go up. The education part is to educate the taxpayer, because the taxpayer is the bank. They pay the whole boat. In most cases, they really don't care where it goes. They want to know what the bottom line of the budget is when you add them all together. However, if they do see one budget going up by, say, 10%, and they read in the paper that all the surrounding towns are going up by 3.5, 4.2, and all of a sudden North Stonington's 10, that's going to open up a can of worms. Like, well, why is our budget going up 10%? And why is the Board of Ed budget staying flat? Well, it's because we have to educate. We've taken a piece. But at the same token, the Board of Education budget can't say, if we take 50,000 out of theirs and put it into our capital, that they now don't have an extra $50,000 to play with. That it's like a seesaw. That money, if it comes out of one and goes into the other one has to drop by that same amount. And I think that's something we have to always keep an eye on.
Yeah, I would just recommend that we have routine visits from the Board of Ed at our meetings to keep us updated on some of these large things, so that when we're starting to talk about capital for next year, that we're taking those into consideration. I mean, I've heard about stuff from HVAC issues already in what we consider the new school. So just it would be good to have updates on that so that we can make the best decision about adding a lot of these things into our
So
budget.
what I'm going to do is, once Alan, whoever becomes the foreman, after Donnie retires, I'm going to have them have a monthly meetings with Randy from the school, just like we do with IT. And Alan comes on a lot of our meetings. So he's going to have regular discussions with Randy about what's going on at the school when it comes to things like HVAC and
Okay.
so on, and new leaks in the roof and damage and whatever else, cracks in the wall. So because we're going to have these monthly meetings, we'll always be on top of what's going on, because Alan can
Good.
fill me in, and then if he's at the meeting, he can fill us all in. If not, I can fill us in. I don't know, my meetings with Alan. So that's a good point. And I think if we're going to do this, we don't want any surprises, right? We
Yeah.
want to see. And that's when you come into the school maintenance part of it, the town maintenance. So using those same 3 criteria, which is school buildings, parking lots, and grounds. So I'm thinking that maintenance, when it comes to the school buildings, if we have to have repairs, we're not putting a new roof on, but we're repairing a roof. We're not putting a new HVAC system, but we're doing a repair, or even to the elevator. I think also that all the maintenance contracts should all be together. I think HVAC, elevator, those should all be handled in one spot. We shouldn't have one company doing elevators for the school and a different company doing for the town, and so on. So that's part of those meetings that we would have to kind of consolidate all these maintenance contracts that we have now, so we know who they stand with and where the paperwork is, where the warranties are. On the school side, So what's their maintenance? Well, preventive maintenance, meaning if they have to do maybe cleaning of filters, or if there's a guy that their custodial crew has to do on a regular basis, wiping down something, cleaning something, vacuuming something, that's preventative. Makes maybe something that might last 5 years, maybe last 10 years. Simple plumbing, if there's a drip in a faucet, I don't need to send our guys over to the school when they have their own guys, Alan, and they have, their Alan, Sal, and so on, Randy. We don't want to be called over there every time there's like a minor maintenance thing that has to be addressed.
But that wouldn't be capital anyway. would it?
We're in maintenance now.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Okay. Filters, HVACs, the filters have to be changed, light bulbs have to be changed, equipment adjustments. If a hinge needs to be adjusted on a door, we don't need to be sending highway guys over to do that. That's why they have a maintenance crew. So that's the difference between, in my mind, school maintenance versus town school maintenance. Parking lot, I don't think there's any maintenance that has to be done by the school. That's all on the town. So if there's potholes, filling cracks, lining small areas, and obviously plowing as needed, that would all be on the town, nothing with the school. However, when we come to the grounds, it's the same thing we did on maintenance. The town has no maintenance on the grounds, on school grounds. So what their maintenance is mowing, weeding, general lawn care, plowing of the sidewalks, making fields game ready, and repair the sports green, like maybe a hole in the fence, hole in the backstop, crack in the dugout. That's all stuff that they would do, because that's their capital. That's also their maintenance on their capital. So basically, we're maintaining what we consider as capital, and they're maintaining what they consider capital.
Bob, where does 298, the main areas, fall into our maintenance? So what do we have now as the guideline? So I think about the schools, they wax the floors every year after the kids leave. But then I look around here in our main hallway coming in and like this stuff, I don't think it's been done since.
Yeah, I think so.
Utilized.
298 is kind of falling through the cracks, right? So it's kind of school, but it's not. And they do some things. We had made a deal with Troy that if they would at least vacuum, empty the baskets, clean the bathrooms, we in turn gave them 2 rooms at no charge. We don't count that in their maintenance square footage. Excuse me, their utility square footage rather. So right now they pay 28.83% of all utilities in this building. Our early learners pay 12.75 and the town pays the rest. So that square footage on their side could have went up by 2 classrooms, but in lieu of us, we said we won't do that. Plus we gave them a storage room on the second floor to put desk in. In lieu of that, you have to clean the bathrooms, wash the floor, not wash floors, vacuum the floors and empty the baskets. And that was the trade-off, but it's nothing heavy duty like painting or waxing floors or.
But now that it's more everyday use of the alternative education center here, this hallway, and as we came into our meeting tonight, obviously they use this room quite frequently as well. Is that something you can have that discussion with Troy and can they at least work on that as part of their
Troy,
end of year clean?
So maybe we can do is come up with some sort of a MOU on that. Just have an understanding on how we want, where can we go with this? What, it's a give and take. Okay, you've got space that we're not charging you for. Same token, we need help on this because Randy's office is in here. He's here. He's seeing things.
And they have the equipment too.
I'm not sure they have it in this building, but they have floor equipment and so on, which we don't have. So that could probably be an understanding between the town and the school. But I think that's a little bit gray area right now, but it's definitely has something that has to be addressed. It's similar to when we talk about 298 grounds later. So, so is there any feedback on maintenance?
Completely agree.
So going into the tri-board meeting, we as selectmen think this is a good start and we'll see what feedback we get from the Board of Ed and also the Board of Finance. Okay. Any other discussion on this? Okay. The floor is always open for public comment during agenda items, just saying. I'm not sure you've had it. Has the Board of Ed even discussed this yet? But if you haven't had a meeting to discuss, okay, so I'm not going to ask you to comment until you have your meeting, but you know that the way we run the meeting is there's always public comment during agenda items. Okay. Okay. I don't want. No, I'd rather have your board discuss it before one of the board members gets up and tells you what their thoughts are. Just want to make sure you know how we do things. Okay. All right, next. So, yes, I did some work on this, but now I need some help on the next item on the budget. I know, on the agenda rather. So I've talked to the chief and we talked a little bit about, 1 year, 5 year, 20 year, and maybe in the case of the North Stonington Volunteer Fire Company, 30-year capital programs. And right now, we're pretty well, I think we're in good shape on the town. If you look at the 20-year, basically what we're doing is we're saying that pretty much over a 12-year cycle, every truck is being replaced. No truck is more than 12 years old, and we never do more than 3 at a time, and we can't buy a new truck until the first one gets paid off. When it comes to the ambulance, again, the ambulance is a 10-year life. We buy one every 5 years. That ambulance has to last 10 years. So at least we have a plan. So someday when the three of us are no longer here, at least there's a plan that we came up with that you hope that future administrations, they may amend them, but at least there's something they can work off of. Well, we don't have a plan on the fire company. And I think the main thing is because the dollar value of what their vehicles are compared to the town and compared to the ambulance, I mean, the dollar vehicles are much greater. So in speaking to the chief, we looked at a 30-year plan and if they would have a truck that we never have a truck more than 30 years old, if we divide that into 3 decades and have 6 major trucks, I think they have a tanker, 2 engines, a ladder, a rescue, and a forestry. Is that right, Joe? Or am I missing one? Yeah.
I thought the ladder and one of the engines were going to be the same.
Yeah, so there's 2, before we get the ladder, there was 2 engines. That ladder's taking the place of 1 engine, we still have a second engine. So 6 trucks, 30 years, 2 a year for 10 years. It's every decade you're buying 2 trucks. At the end of the first decade, the second decade, you're buying 2 more trucks, and a truck never gets to be more than 30 years old. So if you buy one in year 1, you're replacing it 30 years later, if everything goes smoothly. The problem is the trucks are so much more expensive. So right now, the 2 trucks that the chief was looking at, and is going to make some concessions on this, is the R1 Rescue and the ladder truck. If you bought them both new today, you're looking at about $3 million worth of capital over a 10-year period. If you just did simple math, not counting interest, you're looking at $300,000 a year. So I said to the chief, I'll just call him Charlie. I said to Charlie, listen, if you go the 10 years and your 2 most expensive trucks are in decade number 1, we're going to have a up and down situation because we're going to have these 2 big trucks, then it's going to be 2 less expensive trucks, then 2 less expensive trucks, and 2 big ones. Till we move to where we can move one of those expensive trucks to the second decade, and maybe move one of the inexpensive truck in less expensive to the first decade, just to try to come out with more of an even flow. His thought was possibly buy a used ladder truck that we could get 10 to 15 years out of, put it into the second decade, and move one of those engine trucks to the second one, or the forestry truck up to the first decade, depending which is the oldest vehicle. We don't want to move something up that's only 10 years old, like we would never move the tanker up. That's always, right now the tanker's destined to be in the 3rd decade because it's the newest truck. So with that said, we kind of know what we need. My question to you two, Selectmen, is how do we get there? How do we make this work? Are we looking at bonding? Are we looking at financing? How do we attack this so capital is pretty much the same or within the same every year with no peaks and valleys? And how do we finance it? Is it through bonds? Is it through financing? Is it through, I'm not sure. That's my question to you too, is your thoughts. Nicole, if you want to start, any thoughts on how do we attack this problem?
So when we have talked before, there was an option where we could purchase it now, get locked into pricing, and not have to wait and have that potentially go up 5 times the price that it was now, which refresh my.
So that was on I believe it was on if they bought a new Quint for $1.5 million and they bought it now, they wouldn't be able to take possession of it for 4 years. It was a 4-year lead time to get that truck in, but they guarantee the price. But again, we're talking about a truck that's worth $1.5 million. They know they need a new R1 rescue truck. They had it refurbished a few years back, but can get it refurbished so many times, and it's one of the oldest trucks in the fleet. So his thought was if he took the R1 rescue, and we'll say that's $1.5 million, and pay that off over 10 years, not counting interest, it's 150,000 plus interest per year for 10 years. And they bought a secondhand Quint and moved it into the second decade and brought up another truck like an engine or forestry. If they can get under that $3 million mark for the first decade is what they're looking to do. So it's not 3 million, 2 million, 1 million 8. And 30 years from that, 3 million is probably 5 million. So
Bob, is the rescue truck the number one priority right now over the one that's slightly older, the engine 4?
yeah, the rescue trucks, because it's been refurbished once already. That's the truck that it gets. I think that's the truck that probably gets used almost more than any other truck.
So
And it's is it the second oldest vehicle, I believe?
yeah. So the engine 4 is 2001, rescues 2003, but refurbed. Joe, do you know when that was refurbed? No. Okay. And we keep talking about these grants that are out there, but I mean, we recently talked to somebody that got a grant for a fire truck of, I think they got about 500,000 or so dollars from the USDA grant. So I do think as a town, we should invest in working with the fire department to find someone that can go after some of these grants and factor that into the equation before we just say, hey, we're gonna just straight finance it. We should be able to find someone relatively quickly that can give us feedback on that, what's out there, even if we have to pay a small
So I
dollars
thought we
to
found that
get that.
person. I
What's that?
thought that was mentioned in our interview process by our new admin finance officer that she's done grants and she's actually commented on one for the fire company she did in the
Yeah.
township.
Right. I mean,
That too.
that is where I heard it. But I don't know how long up to speed, but there's maybe she knows someone we can work with her to get this information. I would like to get it more quickly than a year from now. So I'd like to see what's out there, and there are deadlines, right? So we have to keep that into account. But if that could save us save the taxpayers dollars and yet still allow us to match the needs of the fire department, I'm all for it. And if there's a way for us for the Quint, let's say, to buy a 10-year-old one, like Chief said, to get us another 15 years out of it, then that might help us in this process to get this ball rolling. So it isn't such a burden right off the bat.
So I agree with you, Brent. I think that can be one of so it's unlike, I don't like the accounting general's job. She's got to get right on payables, payroll, and so on. The admin finance officer doesn't have to get right on a particular thing. She's got a more of a wider scope that she has to look at. But there's no reason why we can't ask her to start with grants in a big way, like right off the bat, because we have budget season coming up. We have we're going to start talking about in the fall. We're going to be starting about capital in a big way. If we know there's potential grants out there, it could skew the number, obviously, in a good way. I mean, we can take $500,000 off our capital when it comes to fire apparatus. That would make a lot of sense.
And there's also private funds of companies that donate towards these things. So I think Putnam just got a company to donate $100,000 to one of their new fire trucks a few months ago. So those are things that we've never really looked into, but I want to say, let's look into these things and let's look into them in a timely manner instead of saying, oh, we're going to look into it.
Well, I don't think we had the body to do it.
Right.
The
I
grant
agree.
writer we had, was not able to just look. If we brought them a grant, they could look into it, then write it, but we had to bring them to him. We didn't have someone out there really looking at grants. So, and I agree, if we've got a big company coming into town, doing maybe a large commercial building, they possibly could do a grant towards the town for 50,000, 100,000, whatever the number is. So
can we pretty much, I want to say, table this discussion until she's starting in a few weeks?
yeah, but she'll be here I'm not gonna try to address this with her on Friday. She's gonna Friday help me with some HR stuff to get herself and the other employee on board. But then she'll be here for the 17th of the Board of Selectmen meeting, and she'll be here on the 9th at the tri-board meeting.
Yeah, so I'd like to get a little feedback from her about the process, how long this kind of thing usually takes, and then we can talk more about how to finance the rest. And
So when she comes to the meeting on the 17th, I can put this on the agenda again, and we can ask her a comment. What I'm hoping to have her is sitting where you are and have Quentin next to her, showing her how to get us on the meeting, and then she'd be good to go after that. Yeah, why don't we just move this over to the next meeting and have, I mean, anything we get through grants, this makes a lot of sense. But John, do you have a comment? John Gassion, some number Norwich Wilson Road.
209 North Wesley Road. I got a question. For grant writers, like some are paid. If you research the grant and you get the grant, then they're paid for it, right? Is that a possibility for the town to look into, that people might research? And I'm not talking about myself. I don't know enough about that. But there's people that I know of that could possibly do that, or have written grants for the same things that the fire department needs, and have got them granted to them for either their job or something. Is that a possibility?
So are you saying, okay, so there's the two main ways that I believe that grant writers get paid is they either get paid by the hour, which is how our grant writer was getting paid, or getting paid, as you said, they write a grant, they get a percentage off the top. Whatever they get to town, they get a percentage. Is that what you're talking?
That's what I'm asking. So would the town be open to that if somebody came in and said, look, I know about these certain grants. I have processed or written these grants, have been awarded these grants. When they come open again, maybe for instance, the turnout gear or the rescue gear for the fire department, it was grants that were out there last year. If there's people in town that know them and they bring them to you and say, this is available, can I write that
So-
grant and take the chance?
Well, give me a percentage. Let's say that they were to write a grant and to get us $1.5 million worth of fire apparatus. Okay, what percentage are we looking at? Number? 5%, 2%, 10%,
Let's say they said 2%,
2%. So 2% is
0.1%, 0.1%.
0.1.
Yeah.
Okay, because if the commission, we'll call it commission on writing a grant is large, it has to be budgeted for, because where would that money come from? And if the item's going to cost you $1.5 million and they get the grant for you, when you get $1.5 million, well, if the cost to the grant writer is say $10,000, where does that 10,000 come from? So that would have to be some sort of a policy that the town would have to consider. It almost opens up and it's not a bad thing. It just opens up the floodgates that now we have all these other eyes looking at grants and a way for people to make money if they can get us, as long as it's not frivolous, we don't want grants for things that we're not going to use.
No, I mean, the town could, like you're saying, Bob, is establish a policy. This is what we're looking for. Right, maybe we're looking for certain fire rescue equipment or this. And if they do find that and they are successful, maybe there could be a policy assigned to.
So there would have to be an approval process too, to come to the town and say, hey, here's a grant I'd like to try to apply for. Does the town even want this? And we had a grant 6 years ago, I think. We got $168,000 for an electric truck to be used up at the transfer station. And on face value, that sounded great. $168,000 for free, except the truck was going to cost $350,000,
Right.
and we didn't have charging stations at the transfer station or a mechanic that could work on the truck. So that 168 was good, except it was a $500,000 project altogether. So it didn't make sense. So I think as long as we could vet out what the project was and it made sense, we do have a policy already in place on grant writing is what can be approved by the first selectman, can be approved by the board of selectmen, has to go to I'm not sure if it's a town meeting or not, but there's some sort of a policy on grant writing now. We just haven't used it because we haven't been in that position. But I think it can be written to make sense of what you're trying to say, John.
Right, something to that effect, because I remember when the chief was talking, he said he doesn't have people available to write the grants. Or, I mean, probably not even research. Most of them be volunteers. But if there's somebody that works in a parallel field, like fire, maybe they have an inside scoop on that.
So I think it's been a body, just a bodies to throw at a situation. We just haven't had them, as we run very thin. Right now we're running thinner than we ever ran. I mean, I've got people looking at grants and writing RFPs. I've never done it before. I've got people doing things that are way outside their comfort zone because we just didn't have finance people. Luckily for us, we have two new people starting this month. They'll both be at the tri-board meeting, but there'll be one starting Thursday and one starting on the 18th, which is going to solidify, because without having that finance department's been tough. I mean, I got an email today with a slap on the wrist because we didn't get our LoSiP, expense report for the last year filed by September 1st. Okay, like, when's the last time I filed one of those? What is it? So it's been kind of like a learn as I go situation. So I said, as we get back to full staff, and we actually have someone that we hired that has said that she's worked a lot with grants, and specifically said a fire grant in the town she came from. I think we're going to be in a much better shape at that point. But I think it's a great idea. I think the more that I see, Preston gets more grants than any other town I know. And I know that they spend a lot of time writing grants. And why can't we be that town? But up until this point, we just haven't had bodies to throw at it. But I appreciate the thought, and I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And I think, John, we will have more information as the admin finance director gets moving, because that is part of that role. So if you read the job description, that is part of that role, is grant administration.
If they get overwhelmed at time, I mean, obviously, we're all looking. He's written them grants before. He does RFPs. I've said it to people before that Mike was willing to help us with that. He just got grants for turnout gear. So if he possibly found them and writes them up or helps write them up, that's what.
Well, so maybe we work.
Some that have done it before, and he's got experience.
So since this person has grant experience, maybe all the grants get filtered through her office to then come to the board of selectmen for final approval type of thing. But I mean, it's definitely a possibility. Just need to have people that can look at it.
Is it appropriate to take money? I hear you saying, if we get the grant and then we have to pay the percentage and we've not budgeted for it, can we take that out of the undesignated?
We can go for an appropriation at any time. We do that with steep grants. So, because we're paying 20%, getting 80%. But it'd be kind of nice to, if we got on a roll with grant writing, that we put money aside in the budget we have money in the budget now for grant writer. It went from 10,000 to 5,000. It's probably 3,000 now. But that's when we pay by the hour. I think it's something we could budget so there's not surprises, although at this point we could go, I mean, if Joe just walked in and had a grant for $2 million that we can't turn down with a 20% match, I would imagine that we go to the Board of Finance and say, hey, we're in good shape with the undesignated fund. How about an appropriation? So
Yeah.
I think there's a way around it now. You just want to make sure we always staying as transparent as possible.
Oh, absolutely.
And by budgeting ahead of time. And if you budget the money and then don't use it, it goes back in the undesignated.
It's just hard to budget ahead of time when you don't know when these grants are available.
Mhm.
And if we have somebody that has particular interest in or expertise in searching out fire company
Mhm.
grants, then that to me is well worth it.
No, I agree. I think the appropriation process is a good one for now.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else with that? Okay. Thank you. Is that the grant writer?
Might be, it looks like.
Hey, you can,
Come see us after the
come visit me anytime. I'll be glad to have a discussion. I'll introduce you to the new admin finance officer and be off on the right foot. But Joe sent me something not too long ago. It was basically one of these, like, how come we can't get these grants? Right, Joe? And I saw it and I appreciate it. And I knew we weren't in the position when he sent it, but I feel much more confident that we're going to get in that position soon.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't we get the money that goes to other towns that we all pay
Absolutely.
taxes, but the money seems to go to other towns, not our town. So let's defer, if that's okay, that the North Swing Fire Company capital discussion. We'll have some more grant discussion, which I'll put that on the agenda also. But if you can just start thinking about minus grants, how do we
Financing.
How do we
versus
get
bond.
this? Like, where do we, again, when we're not here someday, what plan is in place? I'm comfortable with the town garage at this point. comfortable with the ambulance at this point, not comfortable with the fire company, only because it's a bigger nut and there must be a really good way to do it. I just don't
Bob,
know what that is.
Before we move off this one real
Sure,
quick,
sure.
can you give us an update on the service truck and what got worked out with that?
So we ordered the service truck. I believe it came in a hair under $50,000, but they still have to outfit it. I talked to the chief today. They need about $9,000 to outfit it. So the truck's not coming in until probably towards December, the end of the year. So it's not like it's something that has to happen tomorrow. But they're looking at 9,000. So there's a couple of ways we're going to attack that. There's also 125,000 in the capital that they're looking to, it was put there purposely for the R1. We put $75,000 away 2 years ago and $50,000 away last year to refurbish the R1 when we're going in that route, was refurbishing, trying to refurbish it for a second time. Chief's thinking that if we go into a different capital mode where we're not going to be trying to refurbish that truck, and that truck's going to refurbish probably 350 to 400,000. So that 125 is just a drop in the bucket. To have the selectmen possibly go to a town meeting and deobligate that 125 and then ask for an appropriation for 9,000 to outfit the truck with all the radios, lights, bells and was whatever. And I asked them if you could come to our meeting on the 17th and discuss that.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
And can I just be clear? It sounds like we have a really good rotational plan to replace them. Is the question that we really need to think about, aside from grants, bonding versus financing the trucks?
That's one discussion, but from what I'm hearing, bonding under $3 million doesn't make sense.
Okay.
You have to get a big number, like a $4 or $5, $10 million bonding. When you see, I think Colchester did a $4.5 million and they got 2 trucks or 3 trucks. But when you get into those numbers, then bonding makes sense.
Okay.
But again, this is a secondhand. I'm not an expert on financing when it comes to bonding. However, that's what I've been told. When you're under 3 million, like in that 2 million, 2.5 bonding doesn't make as much sense as financing does. Okay, Joe, do you have anything to add while you're here? If you do, can you go up there and say it? I mean,
My only concern is that the truck's up 4 to 5 years out.
Yeah.
are all trucks out that long? I know the Quint was. Are all trucks, they are. You're nodding his head. Okay, so trucks the highway trucks we were supposed to have now or within the next few months, those still are months away. So so even if someone just came and handed me $3 million right now, we ordered trucks, they weren't going to. So is it a combination of refurbishing and putting money and ordering a truck? Or we have to get that extra 4 or 5 years out of it, or do we have to? What about buying a used truck that's not as old? I mean, we got the one in Colchester immediately, so.
Yeah. So you have to have money ready when something like that comes up.
Again, 4.5 years out, get a demo model or used model, they pick them up quick because everybody realizes you guys will get that. That's what it is.
So I need to be educated. So you order a truck now. We won't get it for 4 years. Are we starting the payments on that truck, or do we start the payments on the truck when it's delivered?
When it's
but
So
we're
you-
locked into the price when we order it today. Yeah.
Once you lock in that price, you put a deposit, that gives you that 4 years to 5 years of paying all that money at the end of the day. I don't think it's a disbursement. Pour it down, a third down now, a third down halfway, a third down.
But over those 4 years, we could actually put money in savings to save up for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the chief said we didn't have to put money down. We just had to sign
I-
something. from
no,
the
I thought
town,
it was
but
a s-
It could be.
I thought it was a small amount. When
Yeah,
I
but it
say
wouldn't be anything considerable compared to what the final cost would be. Right, I would think so.
So I would
That's
think-
why I was surprised when I thought I heard that.
Even if it was 10%, it'd be 150,000. I mean, but that's all you have to pay for 4 years. But you have to wait 4 years for.
So have you talked to the chief about even a demo rescue truck or a
No.
5-year-old rescue truck to get?
What we talked about so far was buying a used Quint for $500,000 and pushing it into the second
Because
decade.
it might be something to look at as we're talking about de-obligating that money too. If it's something we need and there's something that fits that need, that's
Well,
only a
that,
few years
the
old.
obligation of 125 could actually work as a down payment,
Yeah.
right? So, all right, Joe. Thank you. All right. Let's go with, we're done with 9 for now. We're going, I made a note to talk about 9 again at the next meeting along with grants discussion, and we'll have the chief talk about the truck as far as what he needs to outfit it. Okay. But the truck is on order. It should be in shortly. Actually, it's gonna be in December. 298 ground discussion. So Brett, you brought this up. So I'm gonna let you carry the ball on this one. Just let me know, and you just, actually, not only did you bring that up, you added to it.
I did add to
With
it.
the rec
Uh,
round. So go ahead. Do you carry the
so
ball on this one? We'll
At the
come.
last meeting, I brought up doing a cost analysis, but I did get the hours it takes from Alan to do 298 and the rec. Actually, he gave me a list of all the town properties that we do. And I honestly would like to put out an RFP for subbing out ground maintenance for 298 and the rec facility. So I feel like our highway department has so much going on at different times. It's hard to schedule some of the things. I've had a few complaints over this past week regarding the rec fields and the height of the grass for soccer recently and getting that up to speed. And they kind of need to know like a schedule when it's going to be mowed because they have games on the weekends and things like that. And it was in really rough shape last week. And I know we had rain and different things that come about, but also our highway department gets torn to other places when things happen, right? There's other priorities. I know a few years ago, we did sub it out a little bit and then we brought it back in house because there was a concern about, employees and hiring and things like that. But I think that there's enough work for our highway department as we go into this budget season for us to put an RFP out now to get prices on what it would cost someone to maintain 298 in the rec facility. If you wanted to throw other places in, I'm open to it, but I think these are prime pieces of town property that not only are functional like the rec facility, but also a reflection of the town. And when we have weeds growing up through our signs, things like that, it might be worth talking to the school to see
So
if
if
they
you
wanted
said-
to be thrown into that mix. Like state law says, hey, if you're working on something together, you can put an RFP out for both things.
So let's say it's 298 rec, and let's say you throw in Ewart Farm.
Yeah.
Could you also throw in the hay contract behind Bonapatito?
I mean, you
I mean,
could.
could it be part of the whole?
And maybe if we put it there, we have it all priced out separate. So we know, hey, rec and 298 makes sense or Hewitt makes sense too. But maybe some of the other ones don't for our highway. I mean,
Gary doesn't take care of.
No,
Gary
Ewart
doesn't
Farm,
pay
that was a contract with Ron Lewis in the Ewart Farm. And I'm not saying,
fine.
I'm not looking to take it away by any means. I just want to know if
you mean
that,
the outskirts of that?
he does,
area?
no, he does the hay contract for behind Bonapatito. You see, it was just hay not so long ago, so all the marshmallows are out there now. So, but if we're looking at town property, are we looking at if he said all town property, not counting school property, all town property, including school property?
I think that would be taking too much away from, I mean, I don't want to speak for
Oh.
them, but that,
Well, because there's also like the
oh, I
mid-
guess it's all of the town.
But you have
the roads,
medians
right?
at Kingswood and Meadowwood, those medians. We
Yeah.
cut a lot. We cut a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that people.
Got a
didn't
lot of
need.
the side roads and
A lot of people
some of
that-
the cemeteries a little,
Yeah.
but I think about when I look at the hours of how many hours, I think it was 20 hours a week just to do 298. And remember, the main grass of over here is Hewitt. It's not even part of this. So it seems,
What main grass is that?
Big grass, do you mean?
so the grass next to the library isn't part of 298.
No, it's part of the library.
Right, so that's not in those.
Oh, that's not
20
part of
hours.
the, no.
So when I look at that and I know what I pay for other commercial properties that are pretty large on a monthly basis, I think it might make sense and then free up those town employees to really focus on some of the other things that might need some work.
No, agreed. I think it'd be a good conversation with Alan and have new philosophies on how we want to handle that. So you're talking an RFP that would go into the next budget?
Yeah, so I'd like the RFP to go out soon. So we have those numbers with a spring start date. I mean, if you talking to Alan, if he wanted to start it at the end of this year, I don't see the reason to it other than if you wanted to test it out, see how it worked. But I think if we did an RFP that let the people bidding on it know that this is for a March or April start date, then we can incorporate that into our budget this year, knowing those dollars.
For March, April, and May and June of this year, they're in the
Yeah,
budget
right.
already.
We're
Well, I guess,
taking it
yeah.
out of the budget for this
We'd
year.
have to figure that out. There's always, I mean, highway turns back some decent amount of money sometimes.
So,
I'm not saying they
That's if
always
there's
do,
no snow.
but also, we also have to remember how many mowers we buy a year, blades we replace, the maintenance done on all those.
Yeah, I mean,
machines
I'd
that
love
wouldn't
to.
have to be
I'm
done.
not opposed to.
so I think that, you got an email from Suzanne. Well, like saying that was a recommendation of hers and how she did that in Chatham where she went out, wrote an RFP and they ended up going to an outside source. So we, again, there's some expertise there in doing this. I don't think it's a bad idea, at least not 298 in the rec. I had a conversation with Alan. I think it was either today, yeah, it was today. Just said we both can agree if we look at 298, it's not the way it looked 4 years ago. When we had a person that was assigned to the school, this was still a school building then. But the company that was assigned to the school to do all the landscaping, there was always new mulch, there was never weeds, the grass was always cut, gardens were clean.
So
We
is-
would have to come up with the of what
right.
we.
Well, so that's
want.
what I was just gonna ask. Is Alan still on? I don't know which one is. number is.
He told me he wasn't gonna be on at all, so I was surprised he was on when he was, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. So my question to Alan would be, would he be able to help to write the RFP? Because you want someone that knows the specifics. Now, I know the school wrote one a few years ago and it was missing some specifics. For instance, what I remember is it said some plantings would be done around the school, but it didn't say how many plantings. So now you have variables that somebody could put one plant in or somebody could put 100 plants in and you really don't know what you're getting. But so I would like to make a motion that we do that. And if Alan can work on it, great. If not, we can find someone that does. But I would maybe reach out to schools to see if they want to be included as a separate part of that after that.
So are you floating a motion
I'd like
tonight?
to make a motion to put out an RFP for grounds maintenance. So landscaping, mowing, weeding and mulching.
So,
But we can expand on that. as we
so I would just ask this, and I know you're actually one who always doesn't like to vote on something the first time they hear it. And I don't think it's a bad idea, but since we have someone coming in with experience in this, could it not wait one more meeting to continue discussion and have this vote taking place on the 17th?
I mean, we could. I'm just making the motion to do it. Doesn't have a deadline of
No,
getting it this week.
can we make a motion to explore it and not vote on actually doing it? Like, I don't know how I feel about including the school.
No,
there
I
as
said
well.
ask about the school. So we wouldn't make an RFP. We would ask them if they wanted to have one as well. Since we're putting it out and a company might look at it. I'm just saying, I'm making a motion to put out an RFP for landscape maintenance of 298 in the rec, 298 in the rec facility.
But we both said there could be other, we could add to that, right? So it's still, to me, it's still a moving target. So I agree, I think it's a great idea and I'm not opposed to making a motion to explore it farther. I don't know why we could just agree to do that, but,
Yeah, we don't need a motion.
but I
explore
just,
it, but
I just don't know if we want to make a motion in such a gray area where we all agree it's probably a good idea to do that, but to what extent?
If we put out an RFP and we get bids and they are way out of what we originally thought, we don't have to follow.
No.
Well, then I'll second
Right, so
that.
I'm just saying, let's get pricing
Yeah.
on what it would be. I'm not saying we go with one or the other.
Okay.
We wouldn't know until we get the bids back.
So we're not looking at a time frame on this. We can still, so all you just want to do is agree that we're going to put on RFP sometime in the near future, whatever near
I would
future
say the
is.
next 2 months.
Okay, well,
Okay.
that's
So
doable.
I'll second.
And I don't think that's a doable thing to do. And we can discuss it each meeting between now and then to see if we're going to add or subtract and get input from Alan, input from Suzanne and so on. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's and as long as it's the highway guys all staying busy with what they have to do and there's plenty for them to do. I don't want to take work away from them.
What are normal contracts when you contract with a company? Can you say we're not satisfied or say we
Yes.
realize that the town, I can't imagine this, but we realize that the town guys are not busy because this has been taken off of their plate. Are we locked into a particular contract?
I mean,
with
usually you
most of
are
them?
for a time frame. Based on them not doing a great job, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But what it does allow Alan or Bob to say, hey, the rec center doesn't look great. You guys have to get someone there now and fix it. Especially when we're talking about some of the fields and things like that, you have to do it properly.
So I just don't think when we say, I don't like the wording it, if they don't do it a great job, because I think they do a great job in what they do. It's just that they don't have enough manpower to go to
Oh, I'm
the
not talking
extra.
about our
No,
town
we're talking
employees.
about
I'm talking about
a third party.
if we had a third party in,
Yeah.
you or Alan or whoever might be here, or even the rec director can call and say, hey, our fields aren't done right.
Yeah.
You got to get down
Come
here.
on out
Because
here.
they're going to be held, they're
Oh, you're talking
Or
about the
they're
third party.
the
If-
third party.
yes,
I
yeah.
think our guys do as great a job as they can for the
With
time that they have.
Agreed. That's why I wanted to make sure that was clear that,
Right.
when anyway, we're throwing our guys under us.
Oh, no, not at all. They
Yeah.
do a great job. It's just I would say it's more about the detail work. And I think Alan or someone mentioned it at the last meeting that they're not landscapers. They're here taking care of the grass.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So we got a second. I want to bring to a vote. All those in favor of investigating and eventually writing within the near future an RFP to look at a third party to do grounds and maintenance. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Perfect. Any other discussion on that? So now we have tax refunds, and as you see, there's quite a few of them. Should be in your packet.
so I'll make a motion to approve tax refunds in the amount of $3,326.37 to A Time to Cook, Anthony Capablo, Andrew Ladd, James Murray, North Stonington Bible Church, Joshua Stewart, Mike Sylvia, and again totaling $3,326.37.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the
That's the first one.
first one, all those in favor of the as read, the tax credits as read by Brett Mastriani for $3,326.37, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then I'll
Okay.
make another motion for tax refunds totaling $2,656.11 to Daimler Trust, Jaquim De Silva, Hyundai Lease Title Trust, James Main, 3D Professionals, again totaling $2,656.11.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, so a motion to approve tax credits, 2,656.11. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and one more.
Is there more?
I got another one. For 1,167.
It's page 82. There are no pages.
Page 82, where am I?
It starts out with Chelsea.
No, I'm
It's-
joking.
It
There are
sells,
no
it
pages.
starts out with Chelsea Groton Bank at the top.
Oh, that was one stuck in the middle. All right. Tax refunds totaling $1,167 to Chelsea Groton Bank, Alan Lee, Carlos Valdez, Louis Bailey, David Isom, Sabrina Slack, and Jeff Sherman. Again,
I'll s-
totaling $1,167.
I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Can I make a recommendation? I don't need the pages of the individual. I'm fine with just the summary, just to save trees.
Yeah, I agree. I need the individuals to have to sign off on them, but you guys don't need them.
Yeah,
And I guess in the past, we probably, when there's 2 or 3, they probably did
Yeah.
it just so you could see the back to detail, but when you're getting 30 of them.
yeah.
it's-
This is a thick packet that
And somebody had to print it.
I know.
Okay, I'll let Jen know that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
when we have multiples, you don't have to, you don't need the backup.
I don't. Do you, Brett?
The only ones I would
'Cause
want
we're
to
getting
know.
it online though.
Right.
We got all
So
this
if they're online, I don't need the printouts.
Yeah.
But more importantly, if it's a refund of tax excess payments or anything like that, I don't know. But if it's some of those other ones that we don't get often, I think it'd be worth having that copy of why. But
Even when you can look at it electronically in our packet?
Yeah.
Okay.
but I haven't had one of those since in 2.5 years,
So,
so I don't expect it.
Suppose I say this, if we have one page, we'll do backup. If it's more than one page, we won't do backup.
I'm okay looking
No,
at it.
I'm okay with it
electronically.
online.
All right,
That's fine.
perfect. Okay, thank you for that. All business, so we know that, knock on wood, if all goes well, we have the 2 people,
Will.
we have the 2 people starting, as I said, on September 5th. Melissa starts in the accounting journals, that's Thursday. And Suzanne will come in on Friday to help me with something. She actually starts officially on the 18th, but she's going to come to the meeting on the 17th, the 18th, and the tribal meeting on the 9th. Melissa will also be at the tribal meeting on the 9th. They both have gone out of their way to ask me questions and have me send them things. So they're already
Very
investing
engaged.
time in the
That's
town.
great.
Public comment. Is there any public comment? No, you're gonna come visit me at my office though, right? Yeah, thank you. I'm there Monday through Friday. Early show starts at 7. Actually only a few more weeks, John, and then golf will be over, so I'll be there until 4 most times.
I thought I was the only one that ate the candy in the dish. I know.
I just restarted, well, I did, but then I have some frequent flyers that come in and unload. Oh, I haven't had lunch yet. Anyway, with that said, I try to always get something like York peppermint patties or something for,
Yes, thank you.
everyone has their favorites, and I don't eat any of it, so go figure. Okay, that's it for nobody, anything online, public comment?
Nope.
Okay. We have a tribal meeting on the 9th. That's a Board of Selectmen tribal meeting, so I will do an agenda, get it out. I'll try to get it to you guys early, so if you want to add, change, let me know before we give it to internet. And we have our regular meeting on September 17th. And we know that there's a special Board of Finance meeting, mostly executive session on
Oh,
on
that's
the
right.
18th.
The 18th?
Yeah, the way I'm going to handle that
Yep.
right now is that's going to be an in-person only executive session from 7 to 8
Okay.
and a hybrid meeting from 8 o'clock on when the Board of Finance is their regular meeting. But so
So 7 o'clock be here.
7, I'd say 6:45, so everybody's in the seats, because I'm gonna have Jen McLean on right at 7. She'll
Okay.
be zooming in, but she'll only want to have that Zoom. And then when that meeting ends, I'll tell her that it has to end by 8. And then we'll have the regular Board of Finance meeting can start at 8, and that'll be the regular Zoom that'll be attached to the agenda. And that's it. If I hear nothing
I'll
else.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I've got 8:55, 7:55.
7:55.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so we're adjourning at 7:55. Thank you.